Hello everyone, I'm Julia and I'm going to explain to you today what is RAM and a nice simple explanation for normal people just like you. So that picture there, that is some actual physical RAM that you might find inside a desktop computer. It comes in cards like that with little chips on them. Normally your computer will only have slots for a certain amount of RAM. So that means if you wanted to upgrade your RAM, if you've got a desktop computer, for example, you are limited depending on how many slots you've got inside your computer. And obviously if you've got a laptop, then it's going to be quite hard to upgrade your RAM in your laptop or sort of smaller devices because they will be inbuilt into the actual device. So what does RAM actually stand for? Well, it stands for Random Access Memory. And this is all to do with the way that it works, the way that it is a type of memory. It kind of, although it says random access, it doesn't normally randomly access it. It's just a completely sort of different way to normal storage inside a computer. So obviously it's quite nice to know what RAM stands for, but don't worry too much that you don't need to know how it works. If you are interested, obviously there are lots of places you can find out what RAM actually does and how it physically sort of works. So why does RAM confuse people? Well, some people think it's some kind of storage, it's the hard drive inside your computer, it's something that only techies understand, or just something that you don't really need to worry about. Well, you kind of do need to worry about it a little bit. You need to have some sort of basic knowledge that will help you if you're kind of wanting to upgrade your devices or buying a device. It's handy to know for that reason. So let's look at what it actually does then and how this can help you. Well, RAM is your computer's short-term memory, and it uses it to keep things open that you're using right now on your computer. So you're watching this through some kind of device, either a phone or maybe a tablet computer or a desktop. So what you're watching it through, probably YouTube, then YouTube is something that your computer is using right now. So it will be inside your RAM. YouTube and this video will be inside your RAM. And you can kind of think about it if you're in a meeting, for example, then you've got, a whiteboard or a teacher with a whiteboard, then that's what they're doing right now. And they might write on that whiteboard, but they can scrub it out as well. So it is short-term memory. It can be wiped out very easily. So there is a clear difference between the two types of storage in a computer. And it doesn't matter what computer we're talking about here. It could be your mobile phone, it could be a tablet, could be a desktop, could be a laptop, anything at all. They all work in the same way. They all have some RAM, so temporary memory that's running all the programs that you're using at that time. And they also have permanent storage, which is their long-term memory. So, for example, a hard disk. So when you install some software, it puts it on your hard disk, or you install an app on your phone, stores it on your disk so that you can use it at any time. But then when you want to actually use that app or software, it will load it into the RAM, into your short-term memory. So a good analogy is RAM is your desk, the things that you're working on, but the storage is your filing cabinet and things that you've saved for later. So your RAM works by storing the app that you're using, tabs that you have open, documents you're editing, everything that your computer needs this second is stored in your RAM. And that's why if you switch your computer off and on again, it will clear out the RAM. So RAM will not store anything if you turn your computer off. So that's why sometimes if you have errors or problems with your computer, people say switch it off and on again. And the reason for that is you're clearing out the RAM. RAM must have electricity flowing through it all the time. And if you switch that electricity off, it clears it completely. And that's why sometimes if you restart your programs, everything sort of works a lot better because you've cleared out the RAM, you've cleared any bugs or problems that you were having on your computer, and it can sort of start from the beginning. So using the desk analogy, it's kind of like swiping everything off your desk, putting it in your filing cabinet, and then loading up again fresh what you were using onto your desk. So what happens when you run out of RAM? Well, if you don't have enough on your computer, it might slow down and freeze or lag, and it will struggle, especially if you've got too many tabs open on your browser, for example, too many programs open as well. You might have a crash, or it just takes ages to switch between things. So what you can do to actually help with that, rather than upgrading your RAM, which you might not even be able to do, well, you can close down some programs that you're not needing to use that moment in time. So if you are, using something and you don't need to use it now, close it down fully, and then that will free up some RAM because it doesn't need to store it. Now, the amount of RAM you need depends on your device and what you're actually trying to do. And if you are just sort of using something with light use, then 4 to 8 gigabytes of RAM is fine. Everyday work, maybe you're working from home, you just do, fairly light sort of work on the computer, then maybe 8 to 16 gigabytes. If you're using a lot of tabs, you're doing a lot of things with, a lot of programs open, then about 16 gigabytes is a good amount. And then if you're doing a lot of photo or video editing, then you are going to need between 16 and 32 gigabytes. But obviously these are just ballpark figures. And with anything in computing, the higher the number, the better usually. And therefore, if you can afford to have more RAM, then I would always go for maximum amount of RAM. So as I said, to reduce your RAM use, not just for Macs, but for any machine actually, just close those unused tabs. Quit apps you're not using, restart every few days if you are finding it a bit of a problem, if it's running a bit slower. Remember, that will clear out your RAM. And if you've got heavy apps running together, then try and limit that as much as possible. Try and only use one at a time. So if you're doing sort of photo editing in Photoshop and you're doing editing videos in CapCut or something like that, then try and only do one at a time, because that will help keep your RAM clear and fresh. Okay, so finally then, just to summarize, RAM is the short-term memory in your computer. And the more RAM you have, the smoother and the faster performance you're going to have. So if you are looking to buy a computer, look for the maximum amount of RAM that you can afford. I always say that actually, if people ask me what's the best computer to buy, just buy the best sort of spec you can for the money that you can afford. Set a budget and look for the highest numbers for each sort of thing. So if you run out of RAM, you're going to get slow, laggy computers. So you might want to think about trying to close down apps that you don't need to be open. So try and get your computer working better without upgrading it to start with. And reboot your computer if you have to, and just use those bits of software that are heavy use of the RAM one at a time. Also remember that storage and RAM are not the same thing. Storage is permanent, where RAM is temporary. I hope you find this useful. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.